I'm gonna be right in this area right here. Everybody okay? All right. Okay. Mike, can you help me to those reading tools over there? Okay. I'm a big fan of working smart, not hard. And I have to be working out here all day. So I just want to show you guys a few cool tools that I like. Lots of people, when they use tools, they gotta go like this, right? And they have to bend over, and they're doing lots of that. I don't know how big your garden is. It might be better just to pick it by hand, and that's fine. But if you do have more space to work, I like tools that are set up to work like a broom. So I can stand upright, and I can move things like this. If I wanted to get rid of weeds, standing upright is way better.
What's the name of that one?
This is a this is a trapezoidal hoe.
Okay.
I've seen lots of different, this is by the brand Glazer, but there's all kinds of different stuff. Johnny's will sell it. They sell it, you can find it online really cheap, not too much money. This is called a collinear hoe, and same thing, this is for getting in between little spaces. Like if I had rows of plants here, when they're small, I can move around them without having to worry about killing my plants. And same principle. So I can stand up, almost like I'm brooming, like I'm sweeping, and I don't have to worry about killing my plants. I mean about killing my back, sorry. So let's say, how many of you guys, you haven't made your beds yet? Do you guys have garden beds? Okay. Okay. You guys have, anybody have raised beds? Like a box? Okay.
Yeah.
So I like raised beds. I like when you make wooden boxes, that's fine. I know that they're also kind of resource intensive. They take time, they take money to start out with right up front. So in here, I'm just going to show you guys how to do it directly into your soil. Okay, so I lived in Bakersfield. I had really hard soil, like super hard. It might be the same anywhere, right? But particularly when I lived there, my backyard, it just seemed like it was cement. So the best thing you can do is to just learn to pay attention to your soil. And so if it's hard, you water it, okay? And then once it's watered, my favorite tools, especially if you don't have a rototiller, are forks. Okay, I bought this thing when I was back. Hey, you're my way. No? I bought this thing back when I was in Bakersfield, and it's called a broad fork. And they make them in different shapes and sizes. This one's all metal. They make them a little bit lighter with wood handles. But if you don't have a tiller, or if you want to practice without having to use fossil fuels, this thing is pretty amazing. Because of its heaviness, it does a lot of the work for me. And all I have to do is use my body weight, and I step back, and it will aerate the soil, just like that. So this soil is already pretty soft, it's already pretty loose, but I use it on hard soil and it's fine. It just depends on how hard your soil is. You might have to do different stuff if you have hard soil. I don't have a ton of time to talk about how to help hard soil, but for the most part, water will soften up almost all soil. It will soften it up. Here's the thing you have to look for. Don't work your ground when it's super wet. So this patch right here, I took these off this morning. One of these had a leak and it was spraying out a little bit too much water at this patch right here. So if you look at this, this is a little worm. This is too wet. And I know because as I squeeze it, I can mold it. It's moldable. Oh, another one. I like worms.
Good for fishing.
Yeah, they're good for plants too. So I don't know if you guys can see that. If you could mold it like that, that's not good. Leave your ground alone if it's like that, because then you'll start getting a lot of clods on here. Lots of the soil is inside here. For some reason we have different soil. It kind of changes as you start walking that way in the tunnels. The soil over there is a little more sandy. The soil's really full of clay, trying to add organic matter to it. If you have really hard soil, the best thing you can do is just add a lot of compost. So I don't have any compost right now to show you guys, but if I can give you advice, it's, as a rule of thumb, just add as much organic matter to your soil as possible, as you can afford, right? So somebody asked me about compost, where to find it. If you have to, I mean, you can get it from a Home Depot. personally recommend that.
Kitchen.
Huh?
What about the kitchen?
Yeah.
Kitchen? Oh yeah, yeah. But not everybody could make their own. You can use leaves. You can use grass. You can.
Grass?
Just know that compost went through a process and it's already broken down, right? So if you were to buy good compost, it's already processed, it's already broken down, and it has a lot of nutrients that are already ready for your plants. But you can put old leaves, like in the fall, put your leaves on your garden bed, because you're not going to use them all winter probably, right? And it'll give it a chance to break down, and our little best friends, the worms, they come up and they start eating that stuff. And they start bringing it down. They like being covered, they like that environment. They'll eat lots of the grass clippings or whatever stuff you put on your garden bed. And then come spring, your garden bed has just about all composted stuff in it. It's already ready. So, but if you don't have that, if you want to get started this year, there's a couple places. David gets stuff from New Era. They're way up in Pixley though. We have to look for, you know, certified organic compost.
Gallo Wine's down the road.
Yeah, there's probably a bunch of places. What was it? What did you call it?
Gallo Wine.
Gallo Wine.
It's a recycling.
Gallo wine?
They sell a bunch of stuff, but they have
sell
compost,
compost?
and
Yeah,
it's like $20 for a truckload.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So compost is pretty cheap. That's what I'm saying. If you want to practice, if you want to practice making your own compost, that's great. That's a good skill, and I still try to practice it. But compost is pretty cheap. We can get it $35 a ton for our farm, and like you said, people will usually sell, and that's organic stuff.
I have a quick question about soil. I
Yeah.
know that the soil in Salinas is really high in nutrient.
Okay.
Would it be reasonable to bring soil from there to here? Or because you said you want to buy the
You can build up the nutrients in your soil. Here in California, we're pretty fertile. I know Salinas, the Salinas Valley is pretty good. Very fertile.
right.
Uh,
A lot of both volcanic and then air.
Yeah, it's a perfect climate, right?
Oh my gosh, there's spinaches and things.
Yeah, but you know what?
Soil.
Don't make it harder than it has to be for yourself. Getting a truckload from someplace else way far might be pretty hard. I mean, compost is pretty inexpensive, like you just said, and I know it's inexpensive for us. It might just be better just to find somebody with a truck and just go and pick up a bunch of compost for yourself. It's probably the best way. And also, like I said, making good use of your leaves and your grass, that's a good way.
Yeah. How about when you're mowing your lawn?
Mhm.
Can you make that into compost?
Yeah, your grass clippings, definitely.
Bury
You can make it into compost. You can put it in a pile and leave it there and let time do its own work in your pile of grass clippings or leaves.
No, what I do is put a little bit of soil.
You can put it in there. You
and
can.
Then, and then water it, and it's faster
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, but here's the thing: if you're putting something that like grass clippings you just clipped and you put it in your garden bed, it's gonna take a while for it to break down.
Not
So-
in the garden, but it should be separate. You know where you make your compost pile.
Yeah, right.
So what exactly is in this soil?
It's a bunch of stuff. We try to add a little bit of organic matter at a time if we can.
How about wood stock? Can you use wood stock?
What do you mean?
You don't know
Wood chips.
Wood chips. Oh, wood chips. If it's, some compost has that already in it. Some wood chips. I wouldn't probably recommend putting a bunch of wood chips on it because that's gonna smother out lots of stuff. Like maybe in your walkways, that would be good. Keep weeds from growing. Okay, so if I'm gonna start my garden bed, let's look at this one right here. So if I'm gonna start my garden bed, I haven't done it all winter long, and it's just been sitting here. Maybe I had it covered with some mulch or some leaves or something, but now I want to start prepping it for planting. So this is probably my best friend. Even if I couldn't buy this, I love these little guys here. Okay, if I could choose one or two tools, it would be a garden fork and a rake. Okay, this is kind of beefy. It has a long sleeve here to help protect it from snapping if I need to work in harder soils. And there's another one back there with a longer stem, but for the most part, if you're gonna invest in something, invest in a really good garden fork for your garden, okay?
You say rake, you're talking about a steel rake, not a yard rake.
Yeah, Jorge, can you hand me that blue rake back there? The blue one? Not the broom, the rake, yeah. This is David's favorite rake. It's also my favorite rake. I'll steal it from him when I can. So a lot of different rakes can do. If you don't want to go hunting around for one that looks like this, but I like this one because I can turn it over and I can flatten stuff out. as well as go this way, but any rake will do. But I'll show you right now with the rake. So I'm gonna fork my bed, and the purpose for that is to loosen up the soil. It is also to put air down in that soil. And these beds are about 3 feet wide. So I'm going to go on both sides. Now, you know what? I'm not trying to flip the soil. The reason why is because there's already this this ecosystem in the dirt that the worms have created, and there's a bunch of stuff that we can't see, like beneficial bacteria and fungi, and they've created this living environment that they like. So I'm going to try to keep it intact. I'm moving the soil, but I'm not trying to flip it.
Matt, you said something that was touch on. You said worms.
Yeah.
Should you add worms to your soil, or
You know,
necessarily do that?
you can. Yeah, if you're just starting out. But worms kind of are attracted to the right conditions. They're attracted to the right environment. If the soil's super hard, they're probably not going to be there. They might be there way down deep.
I mean, but like people have raised gardens.
Yeah, I mean, you could, I suppose, I've never thought about putting something in a raised bed that doesn't have worms there. If it's a box that's self-contained, like the floor, the ground is like totally separate, like if you just have a raised bed and like everything that's inside the box is just there. Like there's no way that a worm could get in there, sure, add worm stuff. But for the most part, on the farm, when I see worms, I see them in the environment that they like. Like I notice that they're not in places that are always tilled over and over again rapidly. They kind of like places that are less disturbed in that way. They will come back if you're trying to disturb the soil. They'll build up their populations again. But in these beds in here, there are so many worms. So many, and I know it's because we don't mess up their home quite a bit. So we try to be gentle with them, especially in here because we can't bring big tools in here. And I feel like it's practical for a home garden. It's very similar to what you guys would be doing. You can't bring a tractor in here, right? So this soil is perfect for working. Okay. So if you guys feel, in contrast to that soil, when I squeeze it, I can't really mold it. It's gonna fall apart. It's falling apart really easy as I do that. That is the consistency of soil you really want to be working in. Okay? There's just tons of worms in here. Worms are your natural tillers. So if you got worms, you're good.
What did you do to make this soil this soil?
Just time. It takes time to build it up with stuff in it. To build, like I said, organic matter. Just make sure you continually try to add organic matter over and over again.
What if you have too much substance in your row? Do you remove some? You rotate the compost in your garden, or you rotate the dirt?
Say that again?
If you have too much, if you keep adding to your soil, your roll, it's going to build up.
Right.
So do you like rotate the soil, pick the top layer off, and or how you do it? What you do?
Okay, so what I'm showing you guys in here would be called no-till or low-till. Okay? So if you have a rototiller, that's fine. When you rototill, I'm okay with rototilling personally. Some people tell you don't ever rototill your soil. I'm not going to tell you that. If you're going to rototill your soil, that's fine. But understand that if you rototill it, it's going to take that ecosystem, that environment that's in there for the beneficial stuff that's in the soil. It's going to take it a while for it to build back up again. Maybe a couple months. So you're pulverizing the home that the worms liked. So if you're going to rototill, if you have to, like if your soil is really tough, just give yourself enough time before it's time to plant, so that the beneficial bacteria and the fungi can build back up again in there. Does that make sense? Make sense, everybody? Okay.
So you will keep that topsoil.
Yeah, that's why we're aerating, so that we can get air back down in there, back down as deep as possible. It's kind of like tilling, but in a low way, low till. Makes sense? Okay. I feel like this method I'm showing you guys is the most practical for home gardeners. So, and it's actually the way that I use the most in here. Okay, so I'm gonna recommend again to just add as much organic matter as you can possibly add to your soil, as much as you can either afford or you can get your hands on. Add as much organic matter, living tissue or stuff that's breaking down to your garden bed as possible. And I'm just raking it flat as best as I can. Just show you guys a quick method that this bed, I purposely left these beds neglected for you guys so that you can see. They haven't been touched in quite a while. And I'm actually really surprised how soft they still are. Okay, this is just for the demonstration. You can make it as neat as you like. I tell people that a little neatness goes a long way. So I'm gonna kind of move these chunkier rocks a little bit off to the side.
Who sells that rig? I like that.
I like it too, I don't know. You can find some good quality tools if you hunt around for them long enough. I'm gonna have to ask David. I don't think he'd tell me though. I might be afraid I might try to take some from him.
There's a hardware store on the end of Fresno Street in West Fresno. Fresno Street in California.
Okay.
They sell them.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Similar to this? Good.
Yeah, they sell a lot of old stuff.
Yeah, old school's good. I feel like they used to make tools better.
Fresno Street in California.
All right, this extra little step I'm doing, I just like things to look neat. It gives my mind some peace.
Sorry.
You're okay.
So what's between the rows?
What do you mean? Oh, this? I think David, I don't know if he told you guys, we have a lot of Bermuda grass, or had a lot. There used to be a football field here. And this was to protect the Bermuda grass, which is like a weed, from coming up into these garden beds. And also, when you do low till, over time, you start to see a decrease in weed seeds because you're not bringing up all that dirt from the bottom and you're not mixing it up. So sure, you're picking up the weeds from the surface. I still get weeds here, but I've noticed that the weed pressure is definitely a lot less.
So did you guys actually put dirt on top of the tarp?
No, it was, what it is, the tarps are just the walkways,
Okay.
is what it is.
But the Bermuda grass doesn't grow up through the...
Okay, you're right. Okay, good question. So, what they did was they cut some tarp and they put it along the edges. But if you go straight down, it's just dirt, dirt, dirt. Makes sense? But there's like a little border, I guess you could say, of tarp along the border of the beds that goes down a little bit, like maybe 1.5 feet or something.
So this is like regular tarp. This is not like a...
It's landscape fabric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they sell landscape fabric.
Get out of the way.
All the way down. I mean, there's no bottom to it. Just how deep does the
center of the earth.
how deep does does it stay soft, or there's no bottom to it? We don't have a bottom.
Because I watched somebody and he said to dig up all the dirt like down to 4 feet.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And
That's great for trees. I don't recommend it for garden beds. It's not practical. It's really hard. I tried doing that for it was like a 5 by 10 garden bed. I tried digging down 2 feet. I just don't feel that it's practical. It killed me. It made me not like gardening. And double digging, I'm not a fan of. I tried that too on a 4 feet by 25 feet bed at my garden back home, and it was just not practical. I find that if you keep adding organic matter, that the organic matter will keep organic matter acts like aggregates. You guys know what aggregates are? So it's just like a bunch of little tiny stuff mixed in with the dirt, and it keeps the dirt from clumping in on itself. If you have high clay, it's going to keep the clay platelets from flattening. It's going to spread everything out over time. And the worms also in there, they're eating all this organic matter, and they're keeping it fluffy, they're keeping it tilled. So all this is going to take time to build up your garden beds, and I recommend wherever you place your bed, you keep it there. You don't move it around. Because it's most benefit for your soil. It's going to be building up in that spot that you have it in, and the nutrients there will build up over time. So, and if you have sandy soil that drains too fast, organic matter helps with that too. So organic matter really is the best, and if you think of a forest, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to be, the forest floor is just full of dead, decaying plant matter that the worms like to eat. So again, organic matter as much as you can pour into it, and it's the nutrients that the plants need. We use a little bit of fertilizer here. If we could, I would use all compost, but for some plants they like nitrogen at first. So if I do put fertilizer, it's usually just a nitrogen kicker to start it off. Yeah, it's a soy. It's fermented soy product. It's pelletized because it's easier for us to spread it with some of the machines. Okay, so
Is that an organic soy that you guys are using?
yeah, it's certified organic fertilizer. Okay. So, let's see here. We'll take our little plant. So happy.
Are they leaving it for
So there's a ton of different ways that you guys can organize your garden beds. There's square foot gardening if you really want to maximize and organize your garden space. Let me see. I'm not going to so much tell you if there's a right way to plant everything. I don't think that's the case. One way to space things out.
So that's your water system, right?
This is drip irrigation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So usually when we think about things being planted, we plant them in a straight row, right? Because we're used to seeing tractors in fields that plant them that way. That's the only way I don't recommend. Don't plant them all in a straight row. You can maximize your space if you just stagger things. If you think about it in a bed and not like a tractor system, this isn't a tractor system. This is a bed system, because this is a bed, a planting bed that we have. Then we can maximize the whole space of the bed. We don't have to think of things in rows. It just expands it incredibly, okay? So I came up with this little system here. I was over here my very first time transplanting in these beds, and I was like, man, how do I do this in a way that I can replicate it every single time? And I basically just started following the emitters. I don't know if you guys can see these things. This is where the water comes out, these little emitters. So I purposefully spaced the emitters every other. So emitters are here, and the next one, the emitter is in between. So here, 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 they're kind of staggered. So I just said, okay, well, I'm gonna follow the emitters. So now when I come to transplant, here's an emitter. Let's go down a little bit. And I don't want to put it too deep, but I also don't want to put it shallow. Actually, shallow is worse. Too shallow is worse. I see a lot of people do this. They'll plant it like that. You see how there's nothing covering the top of that plant? That's too shallow for anything. And especially if it's really warm. That plant's going to dry out really fast. Sure, the roots might have something to go down to. They'll go down in here. But you'll see that a lot of the moisture is going to escape right out of the top of this. And the reason why is because moisture likes to go from coarse to soft right away. So if you think of, let me see here, if you think of like a bunch of rocks in a jar and a bunch of sand in a jar, I mean the rocks usually go to the surface, right? But the moisture is always going to go away from those rocks into the finer particles first. So it's the same thing here. So even if this plant gets wet and watered, it's all that moisture from that plug that would be in this plug wants to escape. It wants to go into the rest of this. So to help that, I'm just going to make sure that the whole thing is buried. That's it. It's that simple. The top too. Just make sure the top's buried. Boom. And that's going to help moisture stay inside the plug. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So to stagger, it's going to depend on the plant, but for the most part, like things like lettuce or what else will work with this? Let me see. Like your basil's fine like this. You can do spinach, like lots of the leafy greens. Just stagger them instead of thinking of things in rows. Think of things that you can space across the whole plant, the whole bed. Sorry. So there's another one. You don't have to necessarily worry about babying them. If I have a ton to plant, these things really do want to grow, and they try their best to do it.
Of the plants, the distance between the plants.
Distance between the plants, yeah, it's gonna vary. So if you look on your seed packets, usually they'll say every 12 feet or every 18 feet or something like that. Seed packets are a good little source of information. Like tomatoes, it'll tell you 18 to 24 inches. So that's basically 1.5 to 2 feet for tomatoes. That's where you can get that kind of information from. You can also find it online, but seed packets are pretty good, especially Johnny Seeds. They do a really good job of putting information like that on the back. So
But that's
these,
not what you're doing here, right?
this is every 12 inches. So if this is a large type of lettuce. If I was doing a summer crisps are a little bit more compact. I might do it every 8 inches or something. Let's see here. Did anybody want to try transplanting? There's so many of us, and I wanted to give everybody a chance. But if you want to practice transplanting, be my guest. You guys want to do that? We can make another bed here for you guys. I know lunch is going to be pretty soon. Anybody have any questions about all of that?
I have a question about your irrigation lines.
Yes.
What do you tie off the ends with? Because I noticed they're open.
Oh, okay. No, they're not open. Yeah, they sell ways to tie these up. They sell like little end plugs, right? This is a cheap way to do it. What we do is you just cut the end of your drip, and then you fold it in half like a taco. Anybody can see that? Okay, so we fold it in half, and then we kept folding it down again. And this is just a piece of irrigation cut off. It works very effective.
Okay.
And those little caps that they sell for the ends of these are like the buff or something. It can get really expensive.
Where do you get this thing?
Drip irrigation?
Yeah.
They'll sell it almost anywhere. They sell this even at Home Depot.
Is it the same size of tube as the tube?
Is it the same size?
I mean, your end piece, is it the same size as the tube that you have?
That end piece? Oh yeah, it's the same stuff. It's the same tape, yeah.
So you just cut it?
I just cut a short piece of tape of the drip tape, and I use it as an end cap, if that makes sense.
Cool, yeah.
Can I try one?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead. Did anybody have, I wish we could go into a whole thing about drip irrigation. That would be a whole class in and of itself. Maybe we'll do something like that in the